That's acceptable.
I gotta make my hair look like I don't know what it looks like right now, but trying to make it look like it's not got a bed head.
I think I'm good.
Foot loose on the footwork. All right, we're good.
I think we're good. Yeah. Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Mushing Alaska podcast. Excited for this episode. We're always excited for our episodes. I don't think I've ever been like, yeah, I'm not excited for this one, guys. So, Sean, what's
Uh,
going on, dude?
Dude, you say alrighty, folks, at the beginning of the beginning and then also at the beginning of the interview. You
Yeah.
got to double
Yeah.
down on that, dude. It's
Dude,
important.
we're full send on the already, folks. Like at some point, we're gonna have a little sticker and it's gonna say already, folks. All right. So,
Mm,
you know,
it's gonna like Bugs Bunny sticker or something, you know. Abadoo, abadoo, or another like the pig. Blah, 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 that's all,
I
folks.
believe, I
But
believe, I
alrighty,
believe,
folks.
I believe. Yeah. No, I don't know, man. But
Yours was
I-
pretty
I'm
good.
just I'm just fully leaning into alrighty, folks. I just think it's the way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, back when we had Ryan
Catchphrase.
Reddington on and he actually was like saying something about alrighty, folks. I was like, all right, at least one person, one listener, one singular listener enjoys the alrighty, folks. So yeah,
Yes. Same
I
dude that
think, dude,
says mush to his dogs. You know, it's like fitting.
yes, yes, I think
He likes catchphrases.
we did have one episode that was a little overkill where I think I ended our intro with an alrighty, folks, straight into an alrighty, folks, for the interview.
Alrighty, folks. Alrighty, folks. Okay, we need to stop saying it. We're already burning them out. Burned out on
Yeah,
them.
maybe we
We've
could
already
make a
surpassed.
sticker.
All right, let's
Damn.
roll it back. We'll start over.
All right. So yeah, man. I'm excited for this one. Our guest was Josi Thyr, spelled Thur, right? Thyr, Thur. That's how my head says it. But as I learned and you will hear, I'm not editing that one out. It's Josi Thyr. And man, I was really impressed chatting with her. We'll talk more about her towards the end, but I think that you all should be excited to learn more about a rookie Iditarod in Josie Tier. So before we get to talking about her, a couple things to go over. A little bit of news and highlights, I guess, is what we would call this. I don't know. Sean, where do you want to go? What do you want to start with?
You dude, I'm just a puppet, dude. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'm just fully driving and you're just all right, yeah.
I'm the
Got it.
passenger,
So
dude.
let's start with the juniors. Let's go to the Willow 100. And Sean wasn't there. So it's not like he's going to have this crazy analysis to break down,
Yeah.
but it's worth mentioning. And I'll pull up the results for anyone who's on YouTube and maybe we can zoom in just a little bit. Let's see, share. There we go. And so I was paying attention to this. Oh, I guess it instead of zooming. There we
Oh
go.
man, dude, I need to wear glasses. I couldn't see what the first name was in front of for Stanley. I thought it said Stanky. I was like, Stanky Robinson, dude. I love that name.
Stanky. That's good. That's good. Well, yeah, I mean, Emily successfully won the junior Willow. I think that's the second time in a row, possibly the third in a row. But what was kind of cool is that she only beat her brother by like 12 minutes. So Stanley's right on her tail, man. Like he's gonna like hit his growth spurt, and Emily's gonna be like, oh man, oh no. Is that like it's like a friendly sibling rivalry right now? It could like get like intense though. I don't know. I mean, we don't know him like that, um, But yeah, I just love that. Robinsons have had their family have had a great mushing season between Emily and then Walter's now running Travis or Josh McNeil's dogs. So more love to them. I'll shout out though the third place, Addie Ann Randall. Sean, I don't know if you saw this story. I think I listened to this. She turns 18 I think Addie Ann is maybe only like 14 or 15 right now. When she turns 18, it's literally the day before the Iditarod starts. And her goal is to run the Iditarod and officially set the new record for being the youngest person to run and hopefully finish the race. So that is a name that I bring up that for anyone who's not in the know, Addie Ann Randall is someone that will want to pay attention to, especially on the junior scene. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Yeah, every now and then I bring like a bullet that maybe you don't know. It's kind of nice. Or did you know?
I did know that,
Damn it.
but I had forgotten. I wasn't going to mention it, and then I was like, "Oh yeah." We talked to the Randalls at the Connect. The father ran that race, and he tweaked his knee and had to pull out. And he was planning on running a bunch of races this year and couldn't um, because of that. It was more than a tweak; it was actually super serious injury.
Which
And
by the way, have you seen pictures of his knee?
no, I haven't honestly. Is it?
Yeah,
I mean, we don't really need to.
while you talk,
You're gonna
just
okay.
fine. I'll
He's
see
gonna
if I
show
can
it.
pull it up,
Okay.
but he had like that freak accident and until you see the picture of the knee, you're like, dude, you didn't even start the race, right? And then you see the picture of the knee and you're like, holy shit. Yeah, it makes sense that he didn't like start the race.
He started. He
Uh
was in the Connect 200 that he happened.
oh, is that am I mixing that up with someone else who had like they tweaked their knee like right before the race started?
What race?
I thought it was the Kinnick, maybe it was the Copper Basin.
Dude, I think this happened on like the first run to Randall. So you're just confusing before the race as the beginning of the race.
Got you. Okay. That's probably what it was. Anyways, go ahead. We digress.
Yeah, I do not. I mean, they they're super nice family and I've like the mom. Well, is it Casey Ann? God, I can't remember what's her. It's embarrassing, but we've like met like 17 times. Anyways, she's involved. They're all involved heavily with the mushing community, and it's cool to see the kids, both of the kids in this one. So a lot of last names in this race that are familiar. Um, for example, Bolding. Charlie Bolding is a top 3 or top 5 Iditarod finisher. Is it Charlie Bolding? Yeah, I don't. That was before I started mushing, but I know there's a Bolding. Is it a Bolding? Yeah, it's a Bolding. I feel pretty good about the level. Okay, I haven't slept in like 20 hours, so just give me a break here. And then Pavelio's, we got Matt Pavelio's daughter, TG, who's I hung out with. She's knows what she's doing with dogs, and of course the Robinsons, and then there's some. I love how like this entire intro, all these races that we're gonna go through. There's just a ton of names that I don't know, and it's good. That's a really good thing, So, um, you know, it's good. I got some learning to do. I can't know every musher and every dog team. I know the ones that are in the big races mostly, but yeah, this cool to see a pretty big junior field, and shout out to Matt Pavelio for I think he was like kind of one of the people that was helping with the administrative side of the race, just getting all of the logistics. And then didn't you say, Brendan, you just told me literally 5 minutes ago about honorary mushers?
Oh yeah, so they had I saw some pictures where they had Amanda Otto and Jeff King out there. And so I guess they probably addressed them maybe before the race or something, but I just think that that's cool. to see that. And, um, you know, going back to the point that you were making of there's some names in here that you don't know in not just the Willow Junior that we're talking about, but in a couple more of the races that we're gonna discuss. Um, I think that's a beautiful thing for the sport. I think that you're seeing, the trend, at least this season, is these races have more names than they had in the prior years. There are some names in there that are familiar, which is nice, but there's also names in there that we haven't heard of. And so I think that you know, Sean, I've seen it going around social media. Sean and I shared that the video of Mark Nordman and forget the other woman, kind of talking
This is
about
the
the
one that organizes the Ferrandi.
Ferrandi, yep. And for me, that was an interesting listen, the future of mushing. And I think that Mark made a great point. And I think that it applies here, like the races are doing well. And whether or not we see it this year in the Iditarod, we had over 40 after the scratches were a little under 40, but uh, I still feel good about the direction things are headed. And so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So I'll get off of my little, you know, you guys don't care about my opinion. And go to shall we transition, Sean? Goosebay?
Yeah. Transition to the Goosebay Tug Bar Goosebay 150, aka the Tugbuck Goosebay Rug Tug 150, aka the Goosebay 160. Because it's in maybe even 162, I think. 152 it says on here, but I don't buy
Yeah.
it. I think it's longer. Um, but cool to see. Okay, that's a pretty accurate that what they got on the I think what they have on the GPS trackers on the website is pretty accurate. So yeah, Emily Kroll. I don't know who Emily Kroll is, and she just won this race. So I I should be asking some people. So someone tell me. Sam Brewer and Mary Boniface. She is. Those are both from Clayka Kennel. Sam Brewer's Jessica Clayka's husband and father of her child, and Mary's getting qualified for Iditarod and had been handling for them for a while. Dakota Schlosser with a podium finish, dude. You kidding me?
Yeah.
Good job, Dakota. Um, yeah, and then a lot of names I don't recognize. It's good to see Lev participating in a race. Severin Cathry running his first race of the season, a rookie in this year's Iditarod, and yeah, again, a few names that we don't know, and it's a sneaky tough race. I've done it. It's I think it's Anna Barrington was in it this year. She did it in 4 runs. I think if I were to do the race again, I'd do it in at least 3 runs because it's yeah, 280s is it's a lot. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this for fun. And I just ran the quest the weekend before, and then I was like, oh, this will be easy, dude. Getting me 160. I just did the Yukon Quest 300, and then it would like totally wreck me, and I was really, really challenging. And so congrats to the finishers.
Most definitely. Okay. And then we'll move on to this week. We've got the Two Rivers 200, 100. And I pulled up this lineup of who all's in those races. And we've got some Iditarod folks in there too. Deke's in there. Jacob Whitcop, he had to withdraw, but he's in this race. Aaron Altimus, Anna Hennessy, and Michelle's not running this year, Michelle Phillips, but she's in the Two Rivers, so she's an Iditarod vet. And then Sean Dewalski, I'm curious to see how he does in the 100 mile version of this event. He is
Lock it
coming.
in, dude.
You're locking it.
Lock it
Are you
in.
going there? Full send
Oh, yeah.
on that. Sean Dewalski for the dub in the 100.
Yeah. Feel
All
pretty good
right.
about it.
Okay.
Courtney Hagen, I worked with, she's my coworker from the glacier a few years ago. She's got her own little kennel going on. It's good to see her out and about. Yeah, a lot of former and future Iditarod participants. Jody Potts is getting qualified for um, Iditarod. Anna Hennessy, this year's rookie. Aaron Altimus is her debut. She came up debut in Alaska this winter at least. She came up from Minnesota, I believe, and we're gonna talk to her soon. Jeff Reed's a rookie this year. Shani Traska and her husband have put a team or two in the Iditarod in the past. So yeah, some strong teams, and Joanna Weber, of course, is an Iditarod veteran. So yeah, Emily Rosenblatt's running the 100. She's given a couple of my friends some tattoos and helped take care of their dogs for a night or two, and that's what's it called? What's the name of their kennel? Uh,
Uh,
Wild Things Mushing with Richie Beatty, who I believe was in. Maybe he ran the Quest, I believe, this last year, but he's run the Iditarod and Quest a few times. So they got some cool dogs, a lot of Jeff King dogs, and so yeah, it's cool. So this race, the story about this race is they've kind of struggled to keep it on for one reason or another. And they not only got it going this year, and I think it kind of we really the first we were hearing of this race was just maybe a month ago, and they were able to kind of get the trail in and get it marked, get all that administrative crap that no one wants to do and no one likes to do, and it's hard to get everybody on the same page. They pulled all that off, and they were even able to get this 200-mile race to become an official Iditarod qualifier, which probably attracted a lot more of these people that are trying to qualify. Like I mentioned, Jody Potts being one of them, and there's a few other names I don't recognize, and they're going to use this as a qualifier. Whether or not they end up running the Iditarod, you might as well check the box. So hopefully this race is not going to be minus 47 degrees at the start. I don't think it will be. Tomorrow's not going to be that cold, I don't think, up in Fairbanks. So should be fair weather mushing, maybe even a little bit warm.
okay. Okay. And that's essentially, I mean, it's kind of a smaller race, anyways, but it's essentially the last event that mushers are going to be doing anything for until they had Iditarod, right?
I think so.
Because I mean, essentially, it's this race this
Oh, I
weekend.
mean, there's like the junior Iditarod.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about from a non-junior standpoint.
And yeah, for Rondi, I guess. But yeah, I mean, as far as mid distance and mushing and preparing for the Iditarod, this is those guys' last trip with their dogs. And then, I mean, a lot of people are just maybe do a trip like this in the early February, and then they just shut them down and just kind of keep them moving, but not really do big mileage between now and then. Just keep them healthy, get them fat. And just get them kind of fully rested up and ready, but like you don't want to rest too much, right? You kind of find that middle ground to where there's, not too rested so that they're going ape shit at the start,
right. I mean,
but keep them
like,
moving. You don't want to not run for 2 weeks before the race, but yeah, they're going to do this trip. They're going to get some recovery. These teams that are in the Iditarod, they're going to get some recovery after Two Rivers. And then they're going to be doing some daily movements of 20-mile stretch or five. Start with a 5 mile, or start with a 20, then maybe in one more 50 or something. But yeah, all the miles are pretty much behind these teams
right.
now.
And that's what I was going to kind of ask. You kind of answered it, but um, for anyone who's not doing a race this month, who didn't do the quest, who's not doing the Two Rivers or anything. Um, this is kind of where you're shutting down the long runs, right? Like you mentioned 50. Like I wouldn't imagine there are many teams from here on into the Iditarod that are doing a 50 plus mile run, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'd be totally reasonable to. I mean, the week of the Iditarod, people go and do a 50, but it's just maybe just a 50. Maybe you do like a one. Like if you're in the Two Rivers 200, you're probably not doing more than another series. And if you're not in this Two Rivers 200, you might be doing maybe like a you know 40-40-40 or a 50-50 or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's like you've already done most of your training, and what you're doing between now and Iditarod is just trying to give your team like that extra like nudge of just being that little bit more prepared. But it's not going to like make or break your race unless yeah, I mean, it really, what you're doing on February 15th is not going
Right.
to be the reason that you didn't finish or did finish the Iditarod, but it's going to give you could be 5% better or 10% better because of the decisions you're making right now. And certainly the big thing is just, for some people weight on their dogs is like not a problem. And some dogs are kind of like genetically, there's just some dogs that are better at holding weight and better at eating. And some dogs are maybe a little more peckish. And there's also the nurture side of things, how they were trained and how you feed your dogs and how good you are at that. So right now, I think another thing is trying to get their weight up, but without compromising their eating habits. I think some people might say, "Oh, just feed them as anything." When it's time to feed, give them the option to the dogs that don't eat, give them a second option. Third, whereas like earlier in the year, you'd be like, if you don't eat, you missed the meal.
Right.
Uh, but now it's like, all right, maybe not. So you try to like, if there's just so much balance here in this 3 weeks, and but it's also just like all these little decisions that make a little difference, but they add up.
Yeah. It sounds like, depending on how you run your camp, you probably have different ways to attack
It's
this,
so true, dude.
this
Yeah.
period, and I'm sure you've seen a difference of, well, how does Jeff handle this last month leading up to Iditarod? How does Dallas run the last month leading up to, um, and I'm sure they're all like chatting with each other and, sharing or not sharing different ideas. Yeah, I'm sure it just differs from kennel to kennel. The other thing that we wanted to bring up was there's been some withdrawals. I think our last episode we talked about Josh McNeil having a withdrawal. He had his accident at the Kinnick 200, right? No, Copper Basin. Oh, you're just gonna shake your head.
I mean, you can get there.
Well, that would be the Cusco then. There we go.
It's the one.
Um, sorry, like Sean, that's the difference. Sean's like lives there in Alaska. Sean's just like he thinks of the race immediately. He knows the people that were in it. Like I have to kind of go back in my head and think twice about things. So one day it'll be as smooth as if I lived there as you, Sean. Um, but yeah, so he had, his shoulder accident and the accident that gave him his shoulder injury. And so Walter Robinson is running his dogs and excited also to say that Josh is going to be joining us for our YouTube coverage. He's going to be part of the team. And then we knew about Riley. And I think that Riley doing his withdrawal, I think it was completely understandable. It sounds like he's got a young team. Sean, you kind of talked about that last time. Young team and a lot of change going on. Just like, you know, sometimes it's best to take a deep breath, take a step back and say, hey, it's better to do this next year kind of thing. I don't know if you have more to add to that, Sean.
The Riley
Yeah.
withdrawing. Yeah. You know, I think with all there's not it's never really a bad idea to, I think no one withdraws, for no reason. And that's usually a really good reason. It's really hard to withdraw this late. You've trained your dogs, and they all withdrew right before drop bags were due, which is like a huge expense and huge pain in the ass. So it's like kind of like the last, like, all right, time to pull out here. And yeah, I mean, if you're not, you don't have to do this. It's like, it's funny, like people that don't run the Iditarod or don't run dogs, they'll like always come up to people that do run the Iditarod and do run dogs and be like, so when you run it again, or you going to be like looking good this year kind of thing. And like, it's just like signing up for a, you know, potluck or something. I mean, so it's like, it's just takes so much just to get to the start line. And if you're not, you don't have to do it. And if you can't overcome the financial burdens of, moving, or maybe it's just the moving, moving takes a year or two or three or four to get moved into your house. And then, so you just don't, um, like Rob Cook, he withdrew, he had a big long post about just struggling with his mentals, as Marshawn Lynch would put it. And, and, that's a great reason, I think, if like I
Yeah.
said, you're going through a huge mental and physical struggle all winter long, you have to decide that you're in this 110% long before you're actually in it. And so, yeah, I feel like your last chance to make that decision is kind of right before drop bags. And you see this every single year. There's always going to be these last minute withdrawals. Just shit happens, man.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Speaking of Rob, his withdrawal, uh, man, I loved having him on. He was a fresh breath of air, and um, he's like just behind the scenes. Like his episode is one of the most listened to episodes we've got, and so I know that he has a ton of support. That post he made kind of talking about some of his depression and just some stuff that he's been up against this season. It has like almost 400 comments on it. And so there's a lot of love there, and sharing that you're in a depressed state
Yeah, dude,
in
that's
a public
tough.
setting, like I my hat
I,
goes off to him, man. Like I don't think you and I would ever share that. We might just go radio silence and you just not hear from
yeah, I'm
us.
going dark, dude, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, there's a lot of people that donated, money, and or they donated their time or their effort to like get him ready to get to the start line. And, you just see he withdrew, like he kind of had to say something, but man, he gave us like, he's like, you don't want to know what's going on. All right, here it is. I'll spill the beans. So, um, glad that he shared that with us. And now he's got, this army of support, from all over the planet. So we wish him the best. And he's still got, his dogs are happy. Dogs are fine. They're still going to be running. And, it's probably pretty nice for him to just be like, all right, I don't
It
have to
has
do this
it
ridiculous
has to be such a burden
silly
off
race,
of his it has to be such a burden off his back, man. And the one other thing that kind of stuck out to me about that post is um so the depression that he's fighting has made it hard for him to camp, like do trips where he goes on in camps. So all of his runs, he ultimately is making knowing that he's coming back to the house. And so I guess the kind of that daunting idea of needing to complete a test run where he goes out and camps was crippling him, in addition to he crashed his sled. It's like the everyone saw the crash sled and thought
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that
Right.
was the main reason, but like that was literally the straw that broke the camel's back.
Love
And
that saying.
yeah, so we don't have to necessarily break down every intricate detail, but I just thought
Think
that was interesting, and I just a ton of respect to someone who lets you know, like, who shares that, like mental health is super important. Sean and I, we've had our struggles, and
in me, dude, I'm thriving.
Sean still struggles. I'm so much better than Sean is at this point.
But whatever, dude.
I'm fucking with you.
I think
Um,
that when it comes down to it, if if your only reason to withdraw from the Iditarod is that I don't really feel like doing it anymore, that's a good enough reason.
Fuck yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
so you got to be like 110% in, and if you can literally just be like, you know what, March, I'd rather not do that. So that's good enough reason.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Yep.
that's my closing remarks on the withdrawals. I think was there one? Is
Well,
there an
we
L
also
at the end? You
mentioned
say withdraws. Withdrawals is for like heroin. Withdraws is for pulling out of the race.
withdrawals. Let's see
Withdraw,
what does it say here on the website? It says withdrawn mushers.
withdrawn. Yeah, but
Yeah.
withdrawn is an adjective. What would be the noun? Would be a
So
withdraw.
I
It,
should see
it
what
is a withdraw, or it is a withdraw. I think it's withdraw. I think it's without the L.
withdraw.
The L is for drugs, I believe.
Where's withdrawal? Let's see. Let's just end the debate real quick. Withdrawal is the action or verb that signifies the act of removing or disengaging. Withdrawal is the noun that describes the result or state of being removed or
Okay,
disengaged.
all right. So you can say with the L. All right.
Here it is. We've solved
The
that
Catholic school
problem.
education,
Paying off big time, baby.
big time.
And we did not mention Jacob Whitcott. Well, we kind of briefly did, but he had to withdraw as well. Not so much of a story there to tell, but just like Sean, whether or not it's mental health related or anything, uh, I think there's a lot to be said about withdrawing before things get any worse, or showing up at the start and you're empty before you start. That would be a pretty bad thing to do, in my opinion. So yeah, those are withdrawals. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Sean.
I don't.
And the thing next week that is next in terms of Iditarod mushing is the vet checks. Do you care to talk about anything there, Sean?
Yeah, a lot to talk about. Every dog is required to undergo a full, veterinary and inspection. Big words. A friggin' veterinary doctor has to check your dogs, and they're checking, every single pad on every single paw and toenail, and stretching all their limbs in every way that there should be stretched, um, and checking for their body score. What's their weight looking like? They're getting weighed. They're if there's any other issues that the dog may have, the musher would share it with the vet and say, hey, they've been dealing with this and that. And then they all are required to get EKGs to see that they have a healthy heart. And I don't know, we always said this at some of our tours, joking. Have you ever tried to give your dog an EKG? It's a pain in the ass. Dogs aren't like, oh yeah, sick, an EKG, we love those. So it takes 3 or 4 people to just kind of, hey, dog, chill for 30 seconds or whatever. Maybe it's like 60 seconds, and we get this read, and then you're good. So you can do that for up to 24 dogs per Iditarod team. So a lot of times people actually, in my experience, people will just take 24 dogs and know that like just bring an extra 7 dogs that they know for a fact are not running the Iditarod. And they'll just be like, yeah, I kind of want to see how their heart's doing and get a vet's look at them. And maybe they do. Technically, they might still maybe run the Iditarod, but it's like a 1% thing. And it's an opportunity to just get another set of eyes on your dog and an opinion and some paperwork um and yeah, of course you got to have all your dog's shots up to date and so yeah, every dog in this race is getting a veterinary a vet check as we call them and an EKG, and they have to pass those tests before they're even allowed to be in the race.
So one thing here, and you kind of talk about that. Have you heard any stories, or have you been a part of through your experience or through handling where the vet check, whether it's the Iditarod or any race, leads to discovering something that the musher didn't know about, or that leads to maybe, all right, well, we can't take that dog. We got to like put someone else in.
Yeah, when I had my last my second year I did it, there was a dog that had like some crazy like EKG result, and like Stu Nelson, the head vet of the Iditarod for the last several years, called me and was like, "Hey man, like, dude, you are you have this dog?" He's like, "Yeah, this is," and it was like a dog I was like pretty much knew I wasn't going to take on the race anyways, so it wasn't really like it was just might as well get the dog checked and you never know what will happen between now and 2 weeks from now. Shit happens. We've seen that. We've seen that a lot this winter. So uh, yeah, he called me and said, "Yeah, you like really, I would strongly consider not taking this dog." And I was like, "All good, man. I'm not taking the dog." And then he like wanted me to bring the dog to the start just so he could get the test done again and see if it was maybe a fault of his equipment or whatever. And they did another test on him, and he was totally normal heartbeat. And so uh, I I think it was the equipment, and we never had an issue with that dog moving forward either. So, but yeah, a little bit of a scare, and you're having vet checks at the start of every single sled dog race, and
Right.
the big distinct thing that the Iditarod does is the EKG. That is not done at every race, and it's a good thing. It needs to be done. The more you can feel confident in your dog not having some kind of pre-existing condition going into 1,000-mile sled dog race. Um,
Right.
it's good. It's good to know.
Right on. Well, I'm sure we'll hear some stories and see some pictures over the next week in terms of how that goes. I was enjoying seeing the different pictures of all the bags all wrapped up and being sent off or getting picked up.
Yeah, dude,
And
those were crazy. Like
dude,
there's so many volunteers that are helping just with the drop bag. I think there might be like over 1,000 or maybe 1,000. Like there's an insane amount of volunteers. Like absolutely bonkers. I would think it could be potentially thousands of people. Um,
yeah,
that are helping with the Iditarod in one way or another all year long.
right,
So yeah, getting 1,500 pounds times 40 shipped to 20 checkpoints in 2 weeks.
yeah,
You hear that out loud? Oh, by the way, how about one bale of straw per 40 dog teams, one per team, 20 checkpoints. Oh, by the way, fuel for every dog team at every checkpoint. And so, this is logistics are an impossible task that is somehow pulled off every year. I was just talking with the guy that does logistics, and he's just like, yeah, I like hit him up like 3 weeks ago, and he like just got back to me because he had a moment. So yeah, it's
he does logistics for the Iditarod.
yeah, yeah.
Who is
So
this?
Joe. His name's Joe, and
Okay.
yeah,
Who
he's like, I don't know how I get roped into doing this because it's so. I'm like this every year. He's like, this is my last year every year, and then he's always
right.
back next year. So
Who would you say is like at the head of that like the behind the scenes coordination, not of the actual uh the race itself, but like the drop bags and stuff like that, you know? I
well,
mean
yeah, I mean that is Joe. Yeah,
that is Joe.
yeah,
Wow. Kudos to Joe. Shout out to Joe, man. Much love to him.
yeah. Shout out
Jeez.
to Joe. And all these everybody
Yeah, not just Joe, but
volunteering because it's I don't think I truly fully comprehend all that's going into this on like and behind the scenes. It's and I probably understand it better than most people on
right.
earth, but
Well,
I certainly
maybe
don't understand it as well as Mark Nordman and Joe and Rob Urbach and these people that are spending a full-time job and then more on this race just to be able to make it happen. It is a logistical miracle.
yeah. And hopefully you'll have a better idea and maybe some more insight on how they kind of pull it off when you're working on the trail this year.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
for sure. And I think last thing to talk about before we introduce Josie, was that I've noticed a lot of sponsorships being announced for Iditarod, and that's been really good news to have Linden as a sponsor again, and they weren't last year, I think, as well as like North Rim Bank. And so if you're listening and any support you can show to the sponsors, whether it's just liking their page or um, you know, Matt Hall said he changed banks to North Rim Bank just because they sponsored the Iditarod. Uh, I might need to do that too. Bank of America doesn't sponsor the Iditarod. I don't know them shit. Anyways,
and don't get me started on my FU Bank of America tour.
but yeah, so and I think that could be a result of seeing a lot of these newer mushers coming up, and they're very competent, and the numbers are trending in a growing direction, and it's good. And I know that the communications between the people working at the desk of the Iditarod, and trying to get these sponsors. I think that's an ongoing conversation. It's really tough to get a hold of the person that's in charge of sponsorship for North Rim Bank. I mean, like, where do you even start to do, so it's just an amazing job by the race doing that and by all these races. I mean, we're kind of all over the Iditarod right now, but I mean, all these races, just putting on the Willow 100 and putting on the Two Rivers 200 and 100, getting all that
Right.
trail in, and it's just everything, just amazing by everybody. Hell yeah, go mushing community.
Let's go, baby. Hey, before we talk about Josie, I just wanted to real quickly circle back around to something we talked about earlier, and that is Matt Randall's
That Warner
dislocated
brother.
knee. This picture is, I think, I don't want to lose the picture,
How do
but
you
let's go back.
relocate? How do you relocate a dislocated knee?
So this picture was taken 2 weeks after. Oh, come on.
Dude, and he was just like limping around at the Connect 200, and I was like, damn, how you doing, dude? And he just
Yeah,
was like,
man.
he's a trooper, dude.
He really is. And you had it right. Casey Ann is the mom
Ah,
and the wife's
nice.
name. So good job, Sean. But in closing our intro out, we got to do a little introduction of Josie. And it's funny how that works behind the scenes. Normally, Sean and I, are you okay with the microphone there completely covering your face there?
Sorry. Yep. I'm a child.
Anyone watching, go just look at Sean. Um, but it's funny behind the scenes how it normally goes. Like Sean and I will identify someone that we want to have on, and most of the time it's been Sean that reaches out. He's got the connections. He's the one there. He's right. But sometimes it's just like Sean's got a lot going on. I'm like, all right, well, I'll be happy to reach out and see if we can like get some other folks in. And so Josie and I had kind of done a lot of back and forth. We were trying to get this on a couple weeks ago, and I was in Utah and New York and all of that. So glad to finally get her on. And I have to say, man, I was super impressed. I've said it a couple times. I told her towards the end of it too. She just turned 30 a few months ago, and she's got 20 years of mushing experience. And I'm just like, man, 20 years of experience, and she's so young. Um, her story kind of, she's loved mushing since she was a child. It really kind of reminded me of when we had Hunter on and he was kind of talking about that. So, before I get lost in my thoughts, Sean, what was your, what did you have? What were your takeaways, thoughts, anything?
Well, I mean, before you do takeaways, I guess just I had no idea who Josi Thyr is until this winter, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot because I'm not I don't know everything. I don't know
You're not
everyone.
Amadeus. You
Whatever.
don't know it all,
I don't know who Amadeus is either.
Neither do I. It just came out.
So, uh, I and then I went to the Copper Basin, and boom, Josie Thyr, 7th place. Then I'm like, okay, Josie Thyr, and she's running. I did her on okay, whoa, 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 whoa. And then you fast forward, Quest, Josie Thyr run Quest, 3rd place. Okay, who,
Wait,
what?
come again? One more time?
And she what? And
Huh?
and I saw her at the Copper Basin, and I was like, I wasn't quite sure like who she was, because like you're always bundled up, and then I'm like, is that Josie? And then I don't know, and I never ended up introducing myself, so it was cool to get to chat with her, and she's just like clearly has done this a long time, and not it's not like doing something a long time doesn't necessarily make you that great at of a musher, but she's been doing it the right way a long time, and it's evident. And she, man, the way she just talks dogs and talks about training, and she's humble, but confident at the same time, and the right balance of those two things. And clearly has an experienced dog team too that she has spent their whole lives with her, and they have really deep connection and her own kennel, and it just seems like such a recipe for success. And I was we had a blast talking with her. It was super fun, and I learned a lot. um I'm really excited to see what she does out there on the trail, and I think it's just inevitable she's going to have success out there, given how good her team is, how good she clearly is at mushing. Um, and obviously this is uncharted territory. Iditarod has thrown the best mushers into situations they can't get out of. You never know what happens out there. She's never gone 500 miles with her dog team yet, so it is new territory. But I just feel like she's equipped to totally crush this race. And if by the time you listen to her talk to us for an hour plus, I think y'all will agree. And yeah, I'm a fan. So go Josie.
Yeah.
And it was super. Really had a good time talking with her, and I was like just trying to hang, like pretend like I know things too, but I don't.
The thing that you talk about, she is humble but confident. Her results this race season leading into Iditarod, 7th and 3rd place, right? That wasn't even a goal of hers. She's just like, oh, I'm gonna kind of like I'm using these events as training runs for the Iditarod, right? And so, usually if that's the case, you're not necessarily like going all out to try to win the race. You're maybe leaving a little in the tank. You're kind of like, maybe they could run over 10 miles an hour, but maybe you're kind of like dialing it down a little bit. That's what you do for that Iditarod, right? That's what you want. But yeah, she wasn't even trying to do as well as she did, and she has those results. And I think that that was impressive to me. Um, and yeah, like by the end of the episode, or by the end of the recording with her, I was like, all right, she's got to be one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year. It just is so apparent. Like we talked a lot to Eddie last season, and like there seemed like there were even some, just in the way that they carry themselves, just kind of like some similarities that struck me as well. So yeah, we're super excited to see how she does, in this race, and we'll be rooting her on as we do everyone. And Sean, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, also the fact that she's just like super calm talking to us and just turned in her drop bags, and like I think she like plans ahead of time, which is like this crazy concept I'm just hearing about. But yeah, she like prepares and writes things down and whatever. So like I don't think she's really even that overwhelmed with like what it would be overwhelming to most mushers or anybody. And I'm sure there'll be some moment where it hits her and maybe, you feel like a rookie, but I don't even think, yeah,
She
that was
seems
something I
prepared
noted.
and equipped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a good point you make about, like, again, behind the scenes right now can be a difficult time to ask someone to come on and record because they're so close to the race. You had the drop bags, next week's the vets. Like, our podcast could be the last thing someone wants to do right now. And when I reached out to her, it was like last week or so. I was just like, hey, I wanted to follow up. I wanted to see if we could get you on. I know drop bags are coming up. And she was just like, yeah, I should be good to go. Tuesday's perfect. And I was just like, what? Like, drop bags are due, like, I think the same day. So shout out to her. I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode and learning more about Josie. I think that she is a name that is here to stay. She is happy living in Fairbanks. She is carrying out a childhood dream. And I think that her name is going to be synonymous with some of the future of mushing. I really do. Like Hunter Keefe, he's a little younger, but same thing. He's a name that we're probably going to hear about for, years to come. And I think she's right there too. So we hope you guys enjoy. Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Mushing Alaska podcast. We're excited to have our next guest on. Welcome on, Josi Thyr.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Uh,
Good.
I hope did I say your last name correct? I should have probably asked you before we press record.
It's actually tear.
Thyr.
So like
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
teardrop. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
But it's okay. Lots of people get it wrong.
Instant regrets as I said it. I was like, oh, I should have asked. What was I thinking here?
No
Yeah. Way to
worries.
go, Brennan.
Congrats on getting your drop bags in. I guess that's like your first Iditarod drop bags. So how did that whole process go?
Yeah. It went pretty well. I've helped with drop bags. I worked for Aaron Burmeister, Jesse Royer, so I've seen it done, and that was definitely helpful to have kind of an idea and some lists to go off of. Aaron gave us at the rookie meeting some good lists. Had some help from my friend Noah Perara as well. So just kind of getting different lists and comparing, and I think we got everything. I guess we'll find out when we're out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're definitely probably on the heavy side, or about 1,700 pounds is what they weighed in at. So, but I'd rather have more than not enough. So,
Right. And
I
do they
got big
charge you
dogs that eat a
by
lot.
the pound?
They do, yeah,
Oof.
yeah.
All right. So it's
So,
like one
Wow.
dollar a
yeah,
pound.
It was like 63 cents, I think. They give a discount, I
Oh,
believe. So
okay.
yeah, you know,
Yeah,
it's a
so it's
drop
like
in the
what
bucket
is
at
like
this
a
point.
yeah, I know, like 100 pounds extra, 63
Right.
extra dollars. It's like, man, might as well.
Yeah, bag of dog food.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's awesome that you're able to pull that off without, it being too stressful. I know that if Brendan or myself were to, I mean, I've done them with Jeff and for myself, of course, but it's always just like, I'm like, do I have to start like now? It's like, should I start wrapping booties in like November? Probably, but am I? No, probably not.
See, I'm a planner, so I like to get stuff done well in advance. And so um, I've been fortunate. One of my friends, Michelle, came up and has handled for me this winter. And so she was wrapping booty. I don't know. She got the booties done way early. So they've been sitting in the living room. So we were really excited to finally pack these because we got all kinds of stuff out of the cabin. Like, okay, now we have all this room. We can bring more dogs in.
Nice. And how many sled dogs do you have?
I have 26.
26.
Yeah, 26 sled dogs and one very fat collie dog that holds the couch now.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, I definitely I think the whole sled dog world has been really impressed with your races this winter and I mean, yeah, 7th place Copper Basin and a podium finish on the Quest, that's
Let's go.
pretty amazing. Pretty amazing and congratulations.
thank you. It was been a pretty sweet ride this winter. I mean, I guess for me, I've run dogs for a while, gotten to race a lot in the lower 48. So coming up here, I wasn't quite sure what to expect race wise, but wanted to do things that would be challenging. And so both the Copper Basin,
Yeah.
the Copper Basin, isn't very technical. It's a pretty flat trail, really, compared to what we train on here in Fairbanks. But the real soft trail, it's kind of a mental mind game, right? Like, yeah, it's really slow, 6 miles an hour. This is great Iditarod training. And then, of course, the Quest. I mean, the Quest was a blast because it was just constantly changing, whether you're going up and over Rosebud or Eagle or you're, running around Two Rivers. That was beautiful, just fun trail and keeps you awake because you never know. There's twists and turns the entire time. And then Birch Creek is just cold and long and you wind in and out of that and you're like, okay, oh, we've only gone 30 miles. All right.
Yeah.
But it was fun. So I
So
love
yeah,
it.
like we were looking at, 7th place Copper Basin. There's quite a like good names in front of you. Like that's so respectable. Like you could say you beat Dallas in that race. Like there's a lot of good stuff to talk about there. And then the Quest 3rd place. Like I was paying attention uh to that, and like I was noticing how you were really catching on to Eddie, and your dog seemed to finish strong, at least for me, couch mushing, looking at the GPS and like the tracker and figuring out your MPH and stuff. So I don't know, is that like a fair assessment? Did you feel good about your finish there at the Quest?
Yeah, I was pretty happy. So both the Copper Basin and the Quest, to me, I was running them as training runs. Like we're looking and focused on Iditarod and getting through Iditarod. So I really set up for both of those races a schedule where I had a pretty set schedule in my mind of how we were going to run them. We adjusted a little bit. Um, but really just watching the dogs and hopefully continuing to learn to read my dogs better and just watch them because I did want a strong finish. Obviously Copper Basin, I mean, we kept it pretty slow, and it paid off because one of my goals was to get through it with all 12 dogs. I really wanted to get them all through it and not have any injuries, and we accomplished that. I didn't think that we would be able to, but that was, the goal. And I mean, they were incredibly strong. I don't think I've ever had a team finish so beautifully as they did at Copper Basin. And then the Quest, it was just cold. And they did really well. I think, with that team, it was mostly the same dogs. Um, But coming down Eagle, we definitely had some injuries that I didn't notice until we camped on Birch Creek. And so then, of course, those dogs, we kind of had to slow it down quite a bit to get them into circle. Took a little longer rest so I could evaluate everyone a little better. And then they just motored on back really well. So I was pretty happy with that. And learned what they can do and pushed them a little bit, in both the races. There's a little bit of like, well, they're doing pretty good. What can we push a little bit more and just see, what they can do? Yeah, we could have. But I wanted them to have a real good experience as we're, just building trust. I have a couple 2-year-olds on the team. I have a couple dogs that I hadn't raced before. And so getting those dogs through it and having a good experience was pretty important. And so now hopefully we're in a good position to start Iditarod with, I only had 16 dogs. I only have 16 raceable dogs, so 2 years and older. So I have kind of a shoestring team, so there's not wiggle room. And so that's been a big part with these early races, is that I don't have the ability to like push really hard and potentially have an injury like at the Quest that's going to kick them out of Iditarod because I don't have extras. So we've been walking a fine line all season.
I mean,
But
you're not pushing hard and you got 7th and 3rd place. I mean, dang, I'm kind of over here like, what if you were, like, damn.
I know they had more gas in their tank, but yeah, we'll see. Iditarod, like I look at Iditarod's a very long race and I haven't done it before. So if they can do 300 miles, now we have to try to do that 3 times and a little bit further. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead,
Sean,
Brennan.
no, like I'm literally over here like throwing all these different things and different ways we can go, and I'm like, all right, let me calm down, Sean, please
Nah,
subdue
just
me. And
hearing you.
you're probably gonna ask something that I was thinking of,
Yeah, I mean, I just hearing you talk, you just sound experienced, even, and you are, and having those, it seems like, having those conservative, you're trying to like get your whole team through the Copper Basin, and then you end up finishing high up in that, finishing 7th because of that. Probably, there a lot of folks probably kind of sent it early and then they end up falling back, and so some mature mushing there, and your team, I mean, on paper, after running those 2 races that with that much success, it sounds like they're going to be ready for it, and you're pushing, it's that Brennan heard talking about pushing, you want to push them a little bit, you don't want to have not pushed your dogs a little bit and before 1,000-mile Iditarod. So but keeping it fun at the same time, those are just like some serious wisdom there, and that's just like what I was thinking as you were talking. I don't know why I even said that, but yeah. So you're going in and running the Iditarod, and 1,000-mile event, and are your goals, are they basically like, get to the finish line with the best team you can as quickly as you can, but not without compromising that goal of getting to the finish line? Like, what are you trying to do in this race?
I think really.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I was going to say, so yeah, really for me, the adventure, completing the Iditarod and then seeing, kind of seeing where we fall. One of the fun things about like the Copper Basin or even the Quest until I got to Central really is that, you have these bigger fields. You don't necessarily, I get pretty focused, on the team and running my team and reading them and seeing what, how they're doing. And so you don't necessarily pay any attention to where you're at. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I'm right behind Nick, like at the Copper or whatever. And so for the Iditarod, I think it'll be kind of the same thing, like really just looking at my team, trying to make sure that I'm setting them up well for the end. So not, overrunning them, making sure we're having a good run rest schedule, and continuing to build our bond and that trust and get to the finish line. And then, next year, years after that, we'll see. But this is kind of I feel like in some ways like a measuring stick, getting to the finish, seeing how they can do it. I've kind of had a goal in the back of my head and kind of wrote out a schedule that, a 10-day Iditarod I'd be pretty happy with if we could do that. But, you're going to adjust as you're out there. You might run faster some runs or be slower. You might have to take some extra time. So that's kind of in the back of my mind. That's what we're thinking, but it could all change. Who knows? The trail could be super slow and no one's doing a 10-day Iditarod. You just never know. So.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be one or two curveballs that the entire state of Alaska might throw you.
Yeah. I mean, you could get to the coast and be shut down for a day or two. So it's just,
right.
I don't know. I'm learning this winter, especially. We've had a lot of ups and downs right before Quest, and just not the team. The team was always great, but just mechanical issues, trucks catching fire, things like that. And so just learning to roll with it. And I feel like that's just dog mushing in general, and especially distance mushing when you're out there, just, not allowing yourself to get too down because you had a slow run. And then sometimes realizing like that, everyone's going through, like at the Copper Basin, everyone's running that same trail. And so I remember there was one run that Annette passed me and I felt like I was standing still. And I was like, well, man, I am like probably the only one going so slow. And I was like, no, like this is a slow trail. Her team just is looking really great right now. And then I got into a checkpoint. I think I was talking with Jake Witkoff and he's like, oh yeah, how far, how long did it take you? And we were within, 0.1 or 2 miles an hour. And I was like, okay, see, but you can't let yourself kind of get in that downward spiral where you're like, oh man, because then the dogs feed off of it, right? And so then they're like, you're disappointed in us, and they're actually doing great. And I always think that my dog team is trying to go as fast as they can. Now I might be slowing them down, like at the Copper, to try to minimize any injuries and things like that, but they're always trying to go as fast as they can. So if we're going over, up Eagle Summit and it's slower than I think they should, I've just started to just tell me, nope, they are going as fast as they can. Maybe I can get off and run and that's going to help them a little bit. But as long as we're moving down the trail and they're happy and they're eating and, it's all good.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on here. The mental aspect of things, just how things can seem like they're going way worse than you think they are, just because they're in the cold and sleep deprived and you're used to going 9.5 miles an hour and you're going 2/3 of that speed and you're like, oh, what am I doing? And that's at least from my perspective. And then just like, all right, hold on a second. Like you get to the checkpoint, you talk to another musher and they're like, hey, yeah, dude, that was like the slowest run of the season for me. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
Someone else is struggling with me right there with me.
Exactly. And then you can go the next leg and all of a sudden the trail's better and they pick right back up and you're like, why was I worried? So
yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Brendan, I feel like I wanted to talk with Josie about, your origin story and how you got into things. And we might be doing things slightly out of order, but I was just so excited about your Copper Basin and the quest and how well your season's been going. But yeah, I mean, what's your getting into mushing? Where'd you grow up and how'd you get into this thing? And we kind of read an article about you, but
let me preface this. So
yeah.
I was like trying to find some information out, and then like Sean and I were talking beforehand. I'm like, dude, man, she's got like 20 years of mushing experience. And I was like, do you just guess her age? Do you have any idea? I'm like, 20 years. I'm like, and then like I'm doing the math. I'm like, wait, you're only 29? Is that right?
I'm 30, but yeah, close.
The dirty 30.
30,
All right.
29, 30.
I just turned 30.
That's crazy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Well, it was a couple months ago.
It
Still, it's
still
happy.
counts.
It's a happy thing. Welcome to the 30s. It's the best decade of your life. We're both in it. I'm 37, so like you're gonna have a great time in your 30s. Trust me. But no, it's just, to me, it's crazy that you have so much experience and you're so young is kind of the point that I was making. And yeah, like I'm just like I was telling Sean, you have like your first race at 9 years old with a three dog sled team, and just like yeah, I guess you were just hooked is kind of what I took away. But I'm sure you could tell us a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I was like that little girl that wanted a horse really bad. And so I begged my parents for a horse and they said no. So it's really their fault. I mean, I could have gotten a horse. None of this would have happened. Um, but they didn't allow me to have a horse. We lived in town in Northern Idaho at the time. And so the next best thing, right, is a dog. And so I got a Siberian Husky. And I had no idea, but I was involved in 4-H. And so we had a really good dog mushing project. And we had a little local sprint race that had been around for a while. I don't think it's still going. And so I met some mushers, went for some rides, and I actually got into like your racing Siberian Huskies initially because that was who was around. Um, and so I did that for a couple years. I think my first race, I don't remember. I know I was racing my own team when I was 12. And so I did that. I wanted to do just sprint races. And they're like, no, they had these little like 6-dog, 25-mile races. And so I only did the 3-dog race. And then my next race was like a 6-dog team going, a little further. And I think about it now, and I'm really surprised my parents were like, oh, you're going to send her out with a bunch of people and a bunch of dogs out into the woods, for a couple hours. We'll see her in a couple hours when she comes back. And but they were cool with it. And so we did that. And then I don't know, teenager, I ended up getting some Alaskan Huskies, of course, like most people do. And then did my first overnight race, and then did the junior race to the sky down in Montana. And then I was there, I was like 17, and I was like, well, if I want to do Iditarod, I need to learn, more than I can just read from books and asking questions. Because I have always been the type of person, like, I think you can learn from everybody. And so I would ask anyone who was successful running, whether it's sprint racing or distance or whatever, anyone that was willing to talk with me, I was asking and talking with them and bugging them, whether it's about breeding dogs or training dogs or, how they feed, all of that. And so then I had been given a couple dogs by a gal named Nancy Yoshida from North Dakota. And I don't think she finished the Iditarod. I think she attempted it once or twice. And so she had given me some dogs. And that was how I got hooked up with Erin Burmeister, because I was talking with her and she's like, oh, he's looking for a handler. And so then I came up here. And I think that was where I really got pretty comfortable with a team, like a lot more comfortable than I had been. Because you're just out every day in, Nenana is very cold. And so I got used to that. And yes. I was just thinking today, because it's like 36 degrees here and right now in Fairbanks. And I was like, I think my last run, the end of the season handling for Erin, it was like 30 below and windy. And I was running the yearlings and I was like, I am not going to miss this. And so I got home. And I had just a couple dogs, like some of my older dogs at home. And I think I made it just a day or two before I had them hooked up. And then I borrowed dogs from a friend. So I had like 8 of them to run, and then kind of have built my kennel back up from there. And then in, what was it, 2018, I think? One of the years Jessie did the Iditarod, Josi Thyr, or did the Yukon Quest, I watched her kennel. And so that's kind of how I got to know Jessie, and got to run, a lot of the older dogs that were at home. And it was like, wow, like, you have some of these, as I'm sure when you're running some of these older dogs, they teach you so much every time you go out. And here I had, probably 10 old, really, really experienced dogs that I could go run with my team, or run by themselves. And so the following winter, I worked for her and ran her second team in some races and stuff. And then that was a huge stepping stone, because I think sometimes, at least for me, I learned a lot when I was up here as a teenager, but it didn't all sink in. And I didn't really know, they would tell me things about reading your team, or, feeding the dogs, or whatever. But I didn't really understand until later, after I had more experience running my own dogs. And then with Jesse, it kind of all came together. And so then, since then, it's been just building this team towards Iditarod. And then trying to get to Alaska, get back up to Alaska, because since I was up here the first time, there was always that little bit of like, man, like, want to get back up there. And so having 26 dogs, logistically a little bit harder to just move. And so through Jesse, ended up being able to be up here, and now hopefully here for good. The plan anyway.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I was curious about that when I was kind of like looking at your story. I was like, I wonder what her deal is like. So you had
wonder what her
26
deal is.
Well, okay, so let me finish that thought, and then let me also, like, if you were gonna be staying in Alaska for a while or not. I think Sean can relate to like going to Alaska, getting a piece of it, and being like, ooh, I think there's more here for me. So, but you were also saying, so you had your 26 dogs you originally had in Idaho, and you had to relocate them all to Alaska. Is that what you did?
Yeah, I spent some time in Montana in between,
Right.
even outside of working for Jesse. But yeah, so I was, when I went back after handling up here the first time, I was an insurance agent, so I went right into the insurance industry, and so I was in Idaho for a while. Then I left that, kind of got into tours, doing some tours in Montana, and then I came up in the summertime and did tours in Juneau for Alaska Icefield expeditions. And so that kind of got me part of the way back up here. But then COVID hit. And so then it was 2 summers of not being able to do that, kind of went back into insurance, and then left that. And I'm back doing tours in the summer, and then, of course, in the winter up here as well. So, yeah, I like to keep my kennel, I try to keep it around 25 dogs, because for one person, it's kind of a perfect number. You still have some puppies, you have some retired dogs, but I've noticed if I get up to like 30 dogs, or 35 dogs, I start to get very stressed. I can't spend as much time with them, the individual dogs, as I would like. And I don't like to have dogs just sitting. I hate going on a training run and then it's like, oh, well, there's like, I have a 20 dog team that I'm training, and I'm not comfortable running 24. So there's 4 sitting. Like, I like to have numbers where I've got the puppy team and, the main team, or the yearlings, or whatever. So, try to keep it small and manageable.
Yeah, it
And
seems like the magical number, 20, upper 20s.
yeah.
For, someone running one team and trying to have maybe just enough dogs to be able to like kind of continuously have teams that you could put in these races every year. We just talked to like Joe Taylor, and he has like 10 dogs that are like race age, but he's like committed to just kind of like this one generation, taking them and going and doing these events or adventures or whatever. But yeah, that's an amazing thing you've gotten built up for yourself. So now you're doing tours to help. Every musher has a real job, and I guess yours is doing the sled dog tours. Because you're not going to be making much money, doing these races. Quite the opposite,
right?
I mean, Copper Basin had to be a nice little chunk, right? No,
$0.
No,
or $100, right? You got $100.
I think so. Rookie of the year is they gave $300, but they only pay down a fifth. So I was joking with my handler afterwards. I was like, well, I would have pushed a little harder if I knew that, because I had been told they only paid down $3. So I was like, well, we're not getting that. So
that's funny. Yeah, that's for Brennan, put things in perspective for you, like how really like insane it is that the Cusco pays out 20 positions or more some years.
Yeah.
To get 11th place and make almost 8 grand. It's kind of crazy. So,
Good.
yeah, maybe we'll see you in that race sometime soon. Because I was like, you just did the 2 toughest races, and I was like, well, I guess there's like the Cuscos.
There's the
I
Costco.
feel like it's all for different reasons. Copper Basin advertises itself as the toughest 300 miles in
Mhm.
Alaska, and there's something to be said for that. That you could argue against it too, but I think that could any given year that could be the case. And then the Quest has those
Mhm.
epic summits and Birch Creek's just a total mental
Yeah.
maze, and then the Cusco's got uh the short rest and the windy, typically never fair weather kind of race. But and I saw on your Instagram, like a lot of people are kind of like they don't like to share how many miles they did for one reason or another. And you're just like, yeah, about to run Copper Basin. I've done something like 575 miles training with their team, and like a couple hundred more doing tours. And 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 then you had like such an amazing success. I mean, from my experience, I'd say that's probably on the like lower end of mileage, uh, total mileage, and yet you
Mhm.
totally crush these races. So it's like kind of like in some ways, I'm like, man, if I get back into this, maybe that lower mileage training might be more to my cup of tea, because it's like you're already burnt out. On one end, the dog's running a lot of mileage is good. There's such a thing as too much, and there's such a thing as
Mhm.
not enough, but just depends on your team and your style. And
Well,
what do you think about? Yeah, I mean, you kind of
yeah.
really have a question,
So,
but yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I share it because I just think it's cool. I think people who don't are outside of mushing um, might like to know, like, how much are you actually running these dogs? I think it would be wonderful if I could do what a lot of these, the big names like Brent, and some of these people that can train full time and get 3,000, 4,000 miles on them. That would be so wonderful, but I can't. So I think years ago, someone had told me, sometimes it's not the miles, it's just that consistency. And I think the tour miles, I don't really count those as training miles, but I was keeping track of them this year because I was interested to see. And it's a balance because when I have a small kennel, you've got 16 dogs, but then they need to do training runs, but then you're using some of those dogs for tours, but they need, rest is just as important as run time. So, it'd be nice to have more miles, but at the same time, I think the miles that we're getting are pretty quality. And then we get those tour miles. So even if I, over Christmas and New Year's, like a lot of tour mushers, right? Like you're just doing tours. And so the dogs are still running consistently and they're learning, they're pulling hard. And for me, because I go in the summer, they have 3 weeks off in the spring and 3 weeks off in the fall. So that's the most time that they have off. And so there is consistent just running all year round. And I think that doing the tours has been really beneficial because they're super strong, they're well muscled. I have seen compared to years, which it's hard to tell how much of it is just experience and knowing better how to train and run my dogs and how much of it is from the tours. But I feel like since doing the tours, I've seen less injuries overall, um, just because they have that good base. And I feel like they learn how to step and how to, get around corners because they've got a heavy load. So then when they have something lighter, I think it's a little easier on them. It could be wrong. That's just my opinion.
In the summer, are you what's the setup with your like what's behind your dog team?
It's on the glacier, so it's in
Oh,
very
okay.
soft snow. Yep, it's a sled.
Yeah,
Um,
so like
so
that was something, I got to spend some time on the glacier, not a ton, but yeah, it's super soft and then really heavy load, and the dogs
mhm.
are literally I always think of like those super jacked Australian kangaroos that I see pictures of, and like that's like what the dogs kind of looks like at the end of it
Yeah,
all. I'm like, dude, these guys are beefy, and
yeah.
there's something to be said for keeping them running all year in the right doses at the right time. And
Mhm.
yeah, your dog's having you know moving. It's tough. Those are tough summers, like that's not any group of dogs can do that. And there's a reason you're probably giving them those 3 weeks off in the fall, right at the end of that, just a little nice mental break for them. It's super challenging for the dogs because they're doing kind of the same laps. It's kind of like running on the treadmill. Is my maybe you had a different setup, but that's what I'm betting. And
they get bored, but they're also so strong that even with 3 weeks off, when I hit the four-wheeler, I had a bigger four-wheeler than I'd had before, and 16 instead of like 20 dogs that I was training. And somehow they still drug me everywhere. Like I've never had so little control on the four-wheeler. And that was the whole reason. It's like, well, 3 weeks off, that should help. But they're just insanely strong. But I'd prefer them to be pulling hard, even if we're not going fast, pulling hard and going and knowing that whatever I ask them, if we're moving down the trail, like they know that they can pull anything that I ask them to do, I think because of the glacier training, especially. And so we get to like breaking trail and stuff, and it's slow and it might not be as fun, but they just kind of plow through it. And I think same with the hills like Eagle Summit or the hump on Copper Basin and stuff like that, Rosebud. Like I just don't really have issues because they're like, oh, I mean, they're still pulling less, and especially when I jump off, like there's just not much in there. And they just motor on up, and it might be slow, but they go. So.
Yeah. I was wondering, what your hill training might be like, but maybe you don't even really need that much hill training when you got them on the glacier pulling 600 or 700 pounds or whatever, and slushy conditions, and they're just kind of clipping right along. It makes sense, and they're just moving all year. I mean, you're taking 3 week breaks, and so and to go and run a Copper Basin with that like soft of a trail and that competitive of a schedule and have a full team finish with no like issues is like kind of, there's your proof that them running in the summer for your team, it's different. There's a lot of ways to do this right. And it's tough to see like what is working and what isn't. It's kind of like, when you go and you run your dogs like a certain way for a few weeks, and you go and you hit their pads with a certain ointment, or you go and do a certain massage, and you never really know, like, is this thing that I'm doing like helping, or is it just a net neutral effect, or maybe not helping? And you kind of have to figure out, like, are these little things I'm doing for my team? And it's not any one time is it going to be a huge consequence, but if you repeat these things, you start to see, man, them running on the glaciers, it is doing something. Or me putting this ointment on their feet once a day is doing something. Or me leaving them alone is doing something,
Yeah. I think all those little things add up.
They do. And it's like, that's why nobody's like figured it out and just done the same thing and always had success. Because all these little things change depending on the year and the conditions and the dogs and their ages and their experiences, and you have to read that, and that's always changing, just not even year to year, day to day. And what makes you so good at this is you're able to pick up that information pretty well. It appears.
Well, and I think too, like your team changes over the years too, and so. Just the style of dogs. Like I've ended up with some really large dogs, and I've had to change how I run them because they're big. You can't go down hills as fast, and not necessarily, I don't even think that you can go up quite as fast because they've got more weight. When you have 70 and 80-pound dogs, I've got 270-pound dogs and 85-pound dog. At the Quest that weighed in at 90 pounds, I think their scale was off. I think it's like 85. But he's finished. He's the big blonde one you'll see in all the pictures.
I can't wait. I'm going to be looking for him.
He's hard to miss. But his brother's 76 pounds, and I have another 70-pound dog. And so they have a lot more weight to get up the hills. They have a lot more weight. And so, like at Copper, part of slowing them down was so that those bigger dogs, they're sinking that much more. And I was like, oh, this has got to be tough on them. But, you slow down a little bit and don't go too fast down the hills, and they're able to kind of keep up with it. Whereas, a couple years ago, I had a lot smaller dogs where some of my medium or small dogs were my biggest dogs. And so, the team, we'd run different then. So it's just it's fun. I mean, that's what keeps mushing so interesting and keeps you coming back every year, right? Is because you might have, like, obviously the Copper went great this year, the Quest went really well. And so then next year, it could be 60 below at the Copper and, 30 above at the Quest. Like, you just don't know. And then your team's going to be different. You've got, maybe a dog retire, or maybe a, new up and coming leaders that, you're working with. So, I don't know. That's what makes it so much fun, I think, too.
It's always stimulating.
Yes.
the mush, there's or your truck gets on fire, whatever.
Yeah,
Brennan.
So, all right. So I've been keeping a couple notes that I wanted to go back on and ask a follow-up question on. So the first thing is, this is from early on, and I think I've seen 4-H before, but I saw Sean's mind going when you were talking about 4-H. Can you kind of connect the dots on what 4-H is, please?
Yeah, so 4-H is kind of like Future Farmers of America. Some areas have both. Some have Future Farmers of America or 4-H, but it's basically it's different skills and projects that you do throughout the year. So a lot of times when people think 4-H, they think of like your county fair livestock projects, like your market, pigs and steer and things like that. But 4-H, they have a whole bunch of other projects as well. So it could be speech and debate. They have, home ec stuff. So whether it's cooking, baking, sewing, those sorts of things. And then, things like archery and gunsmithing and dog mushing. So it kind of constantly fluctuates, and it depends on your county, like what they offer. Like for ours, dog mushing, we just had someone who was willing to lead it, and they had like a paper with a list of things to do. Some of them are very, more involved, where they have like your veterinary science program has, a book, like more studies that you're going through and things like that. So it's kind of a wide variety, but it usually goes through the summer, and it's a year-round thing, but it's mainly in the summertime. And at least for me in Northern Idaho, like I did a lot of market animal projects and things like that, as well as dog training and the mushing stuff. But pretty quickly, after a couple of years, I was doing the dog mushing so much outside, like I kind of left the 4-H world of that. But I did learn a lot through their dog training program because I learned a lot about just how dogs think and training dogs in general. And so 4-H was fantastic.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I just thought I would.
Yeah, I'd never heard of 4-H personally. And is there 4-H's involved? There's 4 things that start with an H?
Yeah, head, hands, heart, health.
Oh, okay. All
My
right.
4-H leader would be so proud. I remembered. Yeah.
Remember.
Okay.
Nice. And then, so one thing that, as you were telling your story of just kind of how you became hooked, and you were like reading books at the library and just like trying to soak it all in, it really reminds me of we had Hunter Keefe on, and he's like, I don't know if you know his story, but he like wanted to be a musher for Halloween. Like, I don't know, he's probably about that same age as you were at 9 or whatever. And then he just became infatuated with it, and now he's out here at, I think, what was he, like 23 now? 22, Sean? What was it?
He's something
young 20s.
in the early 20s ish.
Yeah, and he's living out his dream, and it sounds like you're kind of doing the same thing as well in some ways. I just kind of was connecting the dots in my mind, I guess.
Yeah, it's I think I was very fortunate to have very supportive family and friends and things through all of this. I mean, even now, like doing the Iditarod, it's been incredible how many people, even people I've just met this winter, that have been a huge help. But I think there is something to be said, if you're a kid, and like I remember reading Libby Riddle's book when I was 9, and it's summertime, and we lived in town at the time. We hadn't moved out. And I told my mom I wanted to do the Iditarod, and she kind of laughed, like, okay.
Okay, and I want to go to the moon.
Right. I
We
wanted
can't
to
all
ride
do
a
that.
horse too. Right. And then, now 20 years later, I actually am. And, it was a lot of hard work. And sometimes it's like, man, how did I do that as a kid? Especially juggling, you think about like your school, and then, later work, like being in your early 20s and like working a full-time job and trying to juggle all of that with the dogs. And like, man, I don't know how I did it.
That is impressive.
But it worked out. You just, if you love something so much, though, I think it's really important to just go for it, and you'll figure it out. And if it's something you really want bad enough, it might take years. I mean, I would have loved to. I was laughing to myself because I think, Jessie and I are good friends, and I think she did her first Iditarod at 25 or 26, something like that. And it's like, man, I'm late. But like it might take, some people a little longer to get to Iditarod, but you still, everyone has kind of a different path of following their dreams. I think it's really important that people do that. And the dogs, especially, if you had told me when I was 12 that I would be up here and that I would be running. I mean, I distinctly remember as like a 14, 15-year-old running an 8-dog team and being like, this is perfect. I will never need to run more dogs than this. This is just like the perfect size. Now I run 16 dogs, or 20, and you're like, oh, this is fun. So you just grow and change along the way. And it's been a blast. It's been a really good experience. And it keeps me outside all winter. I have no idea what I would do if I wasn't running dogs. Like, like to not be excited about the snow and the cold. And, as mushers, I feel like we complain about the weather a lot because it's too cold, or it's too warm, or it's too much snow, or it's not enough snow. But at the end of the day, we're out in it no matter what. And it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I just love it.
Just hearing you tell your story, and like, you have like such a big smile just talking about it. So, it's apparent to me that you're like doing what your heart desires. And I think that's awesome. So, I still have a few more questions here, so bear with me.
Go for it.
We're kind of going out of order because Sean was asking a bunch of questions. I'm like, all right, let me let that flow. Let me let that flow.
Whatever.
But you were talking about, so you have 25 dogs, 16 of them are Iditarod worthy. I'm curious what your setup is in terms of the training. Like, you are doing this all by yourself, or do you have help? What's your community like in terms of actual hands-on with the dogs?
Yeah, so until early January, it was just myself. And then my really good friend, Michaela, she handled for her first race for me last year. She just came from a race, and then got her on a dog sled, helping me harness break puppies for a couple days. And then, so she agreed to come handle again for me for the West and Copper Basin, and she's ended up just staying here all winter. And so, most of the training, obviously, at that point, kind of the camping runs and stuff was kind of done. But she got here before Copper Basin and has really, really helped me train, keep the puppies, because I have some like 8 and 9 month old puppies, get them out, and some of the older dogs, because I just haven't had as much time as I would like to get them out. And then also, on days I do tours, I might take 8 dogs with me to go do tours, so she can take the other 8 and go take them on some training runs. So that's been really helpful. She's also done most of cutting up the meat and things like that for the Iditarod food drop, doing booties. Like, I couldn't have done any of that without her, because obviously I'm at work. I could do that in the middle of the night, if it was just me, like that's what we'd be doing. But She just plugged away at it. And so she's been doing that. And then I have another friend who I actually worked with, or we raced against each other as junior mushers in Montana, but she took my 2 yearlings to run with her. And so that's been great because otherwise those yearlings, they're kind of in limbo because when you only have 2 of them, you don't have enough for a team. They're need to go further than the puppies are going, but they're not ready to go 100 miles, in December. So that's been really helpful to have those 2 go with Jenny and Mike, and they'll get to do the T-Dog up here in the spring. So they'll get a little race. And so, yeah, so mainly Michaela, and then I had a couple friends come up. So Michaela kind of held down the fort and ran the dogs. Since it's 12 dogs, the 4 that were sitting here, she kept them moving during the Copper Basin. And then she handled for the quest since I didn't have any race dogs sitting here. I had a friend that took 2 of them with his team on the quest. So kind of got everybody out and running at least. And then now she's going to do her first Iditarod qualifier, the T-Dog, the 200. And so we're going to get out, and basically we just split my team so she can get some more experience with the dogs and stuff. And then we'll take 2 teams out, which is, it's fun for the dogs too. They've done all their long runs with the big team, and that's fine. But to take 2 teams out there, they get a little competitive. And so it's been kind of relaxed and just fun for them. Because at this point, you're just trying to keep them moving. There's not a ton of training to do. It's just keeping them moving and hopefully not having any injuries or unexpected things. So the smaller teams, especially, it's going to be icy now since it was 30 degrees today. You'll help us kind of keep them solid. So.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Okay. So essentially, like, a good amount has been you, but you've had some reinforcements here in the last month or 2, and I'm sure that's been really nice for you. But damn,
yes.
What I'm hearing right now is that you're just very driven, and you were on your own for a little while, and you made the most of it. And the results are proof of that. So I'm just super impressed with all of this. And as you're getting ready for that Iditarod, I'm wondering, if are you still in touch with Aaron and Jesse in terms of formulating what your game plan is? Or do you have someone that you're bouncing off your ideas of how to formulate the race, or how's that going, I guess?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is I've definitely over the years, I've known Jessie for 10 years. I've talked with her probably the most. Talked with Aaron a little bit at the rookie meeting. I know he's busy training his own team as well. But I think sometimes it kind of comes down to you got to read your team and get out there and just see what it's going to be like. At least that's a lot of my thought process on it. And so I have talked with, a variety of people over the years. And, as far as about the Iditarod, about the trail, about, I've read and, watched your Iditarod Insider movies, but read a lot about it, things like that. I think having handled for Aaron and Jesse, kind of got to see how they prepared. And so at the end of the day, I could get a race plan from some other musher, but they don't actually know my dogs like I do. And I don't, even if I sit down, I kind of have this idea in my mind of okay, a 10-day schedule, what would that look like? And I have it written down on paper, but I might get out there and things might change. Maybe the team is looking incredible and we're moving faster than I thought, or maybe we're not. And so to me, I think people just take it as it comes, and one challenge after another, and see how it goes. I feel like sometimes, with the Copper Basin and with the Quest, I talked with people a little bit about the trail, but I was like, the Iditarod's 1,000 miles long, and even if I have meetings for days about all the different parts of the trail and all the different strategies, I may get out there, it could be different. I'm not going to remember. I'm going to be sleep deprived. And so I kind of went into both of them. Like, I had an idea of how long the legs were, and obviously, Rosebud or Eagle Summit, but it's like, you know what, we're just going to conquer whatever's out there and go from there. It'll be an adventure. And so I kind of feel the same way with Iditarod. I think that if I'm, doing what's right by the dogs, reading them correctly and they're eating and we're taking adequate rest and things like that, I think we'll just plug away at it and hopefully, get to the end. But I'm pretty confident, in my team. We have a pretty tight bond. Most of these dogs I've raised from puppies, and so I know them really well. I know their little quirks, and I think that hopefully it isn't making me overconfident, but I do have a lot of confidence and trust in my dogs. And so I'm just mostly just excited to get out there and see this trail and experience, things that I've been reading and hearing about for so long.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm getting Rookie of the Year vibes over here. No pressure. All right. I don't throw that on you now. Geez. But no, I'm just I don't know, 20 years of experience, just everything I'm hearing, just I think the team sounds awesome. They sound strong, so Sean, what were you about to say?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, everybody except for Josi probably is thinking Rookie of the Year, but if that you're humble and you're probably not thinking that, but I bet you it's in the cards. And yeah, I mean, I guess was thinking about like when I ran my first Iditarod, I didn't know shit about the trail. I mean, I was literally like, which checkpoint is next, and I Dalzell Gorge and like the burn. People keep talking about the burn. I'm like, what does that even mean? I guess there was a fire there. I don't know. And then, the coast is windy or something, And so it was, it didn't really matter. It's like, just got the next run, figure out the next run. And you kind of figure out like what the next 2 or 3 checkpoints are and figure out you're just thinking about your plan while you're out there. I mean, no one makes a plan and then actually does the plan. I don't think that's ever happened.
Right.
So yeah, you've already been through hell and back with your dogs. Having done these races, I'm sure there's just some low points, and you clearly conquered those. And yeah, I'm excited for you, and I'm sure you're super excited. And most of your training's behind you. Like you said, you just got to kind of keep the dogs moving. Might do a 50 here, 40 there, and this is awesome.
Treat them. I think it's like, what does Jeff King always said? Treat them like fine china. Right now, just keep them moving. Keep them
that's
all.
That's a great one. Yeah, I remember me asking Jeff, dude. Jeff's got some great Jeffisms. He's got these quotes that he just repeats to anybody, and they really are great. I remember I'd be like, so like, should I give them like baited water or like food, or like when should I feed them like a big meal versus like a snack? And he's like, dude, just feed them when they're hungry and give them water when they're thirsty. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Sounds good. And it's like you can sit there and overcomplicate it, but just yeah. I mean, you're already an expert. You're already an expert, and the only thing that you haven't seen is what dogs look like after 400 or 500 miles into a trip, and that's different. But yeah, your team.
Yeah, and I think something that's helped me this year, I think as well, is like just my team does really well if I'm relaxed. So, if I'm relaxed, it seems like they eat really well and they just go along, and do their thing. So, they're doing what they love. And so they want to get down the trail. I'm usually the weak link. And I think as far as Iditarod, probably the thing that worries me the most is like that sleep deprivation piece, right? Because a 300-mile race, you get tired, but then you're at the end, and now you can go. And I even, for the Copper, I had quite a bit going on ahead of time. And so I didn't even I went into the race fairly tired. And then before the Quest, it was like that whole week between the truck catching on fire and everything, it was just crazy. And so I was so excited. I was like looking forward to getting to that start line because I was like, well, then I don't have to worry about the vehicle. I mean, my
That's
handlers
their
have to,
problem.
but
That's
I'm just
Michaela's
gonna run.
problem.
Yeah. I'm just gonna run the trail. John and Michaela, they got the truck and trailer and the U-Haul and the crates and all that, and I will just run my team. And so I think it's always once you kind of start and you leave the race chute, and then the sleep deprivation hits in though. And Aaron at the rookie meeting, and I kind of have kept this back in my mind too, is like you're going to get super tired, and then about 300 miles in or so, you take your 24. But then after that, like, okay, so you get a good nap during your 24, but then you got the whole rest of the race. And so that's something I'm going to have to definitely be cognizant of. I have friends that are putting together like some playlists and things for me. And that's always fun because, you think about them, but also, they put some upbeat music and hopefully that'll get you out of those low spots. Because sometimes it's just an hour or two where you're just like that 2 to 4 a.m. for me can be very difficult. You're just like, I want to sleep. And man, a bed sounds so nice. What am I doing out here? And then the sun comes up and you're like, oh, I love mushing. I'm not, I'm tired, but this is the best in the world.
This literally within an hour, you're just going through like
Yeah.
all the emotions you can. And yeah, I feel like with the sleep deprivation, I don't know. I've never thrived in those settings. It's just tough. But I don't know. You kind of get in a rhythm. When you take your first like nap after Copper Basin, did you just sleep for 12 hours or did you like sleep for 3 and you're like, I got to get up. And then you're like, oh, wait, I don't,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's and you get that hour or two, but then you also get those like at Copper Basin at Lake Louise. I set my alarm and someone else had their alarm and it went off. It was the same ringer, but it wasn't mine. And so I woke up after like 45 minutes or something, hearing someone else's alarm. And you get that little bit of sleep. And then I still had an extra hour or whatever that I could sleep. But then you're constantly just waking up to like, you don't want to miss, don't want to miss your alarm, don't want to miss getting out of there. And I don't know, it can get kind of crazy. I've lost hours before where you're like, I don't know where that hour went. Like, I
Crazy.
gotta
Just like,
leave
I'm just
now.
going to take a quick 5-minute nap or like a quick hour nap. And
Exactly.
you like literally blink and open your eyes and it's been an hour and you're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
But yeah, I bet you've taken like I remember with Jeff, we'd go to like the vet checks at any given race, and they're like, yeah, it's gonna be like 20 minutes until we can get to your dogs. We got a couple teams ahead of you, and then he just like takes a nap, like he just like you're just always just got it. If you're tired and you have the time, take the nap.
Right.
And
One of my friends was like, my favorite hobby is napping. I was like, that's a good one for dog mushers. Yep.
sure is.
When you can get that little nap. I mean, I went off of caffeine today to kind of, get ready for Iditarod. And so, I mean, I took a nap today. It's like, you know what? Food drop is done. I got time. So sure.
Treat yourself. Treat
Get
yourself.
it in while you can.
Absolutely.
You're starting the caffeine deprivation now?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like,
mean, I know it's only, I think it's 2 weeks, but
So you're
So,
saying
like-
you're off caffeine so that you
Like,
don't have
fully.
like the withdrawals or whatever you get when you don't drink coffee typically or whatever. Is that
so yeah, so I have a friend that's a nutritionist and he's been helping me like figure out some of like stuff to snack on, all of that. And so he banned me from caffeine from here until the race starts so that then when you do drink it, it'll give you more of a kick. So I am still drinking decaf, but I don't even know if I'm going to keep drinking that. It's pretty sad, You drink that in it.
I know I've never understood the decaf thing. Yeah,
I just like I don't know if I really need the coffee if it's not caffeinated, but Yeah. So the idea is that then when you do drink coffee during the race, it'll hit you harder and be more helpful. So
Sean,
we'll see.
Sean,
I've
how many?
sometimes I've done this before, sometimes I don't.
I was gonna say I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was gonna ask, how many nutritionists, how many mushers do you think have nutritionists that are getting? I'm
Dude.
telling you, that's more rookie of the year level status right there. The
Yeah.
more I
Yeah.
hear, the more I'm putting it down on my mushing fantasy team. Yeah, I gotta get you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Usually
probably the
people
worst
are,
client because, you're like trying to track your food and in like November or whatever to try to figure out, what works and then figure out trail snacks. It's all great. But then come December, January, it's like it all goes out. It's like I don't have time.
I'm
It's
gonna
like,
eat
that's
whatever I want
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Well, something
whenever I
tells
want.
something tells me though that it's not like everyone I feel like we ask about on the podcast, they're like, oh, I just eat like Snickers and Kit Kats and like it's like all of like the worst food. I'm like, how are these people like sane after 10 days of racing and they're eating not great food? So I'm glad to hear that someone like I've always literally thought about, we talk about the nutrition and the food for the dogs, but very few people actually talk about how they're like fueling themselves. So
Yeah, what'd you send out there
yeah,
for
what's
yourself?
so are
Yeah. So I sent out um let's see. For main meals, I did pizza and ramen noodles, so real real healthy stuff there.
What do you like?
Um,
Was the ramen like made and then frozen?
no,
Or
I'm
you
just
okay.
gonna do
just
the
like
the
throw
hot
it in?
water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What kind? What
I'll just
brand
get
of ramen noodles? This is a serious situation here.
um whatever Costco had. So what is the normal,
Oh,
the
okay.
cups of
Yeah,
ramen.
yeah, yeah. The cups.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay.
but yeah, but then I do a lot of protein shakes. So I have a lot of the stuff from Costco. I
This
did
moment
send
is
out
brought to you by
Gatorade.
Costco.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we need to get them for
Um,
this podcast.
now, speaking of Costco, though, I was disappointed. One of my favorite trail snacks is those popcorner chips because they don't
Yep.
freeze. And for some reason, the sea salt ones, like they just taste so good. And so they come in little bags and everything at Costco, but I could not find them at Costco. And then JJ, who's my nutritionist, he went in and they were there. And he's like, they're there. He took me a picture proof. I go in a couple days later and they weren't there.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I had to do like these rice chip things instead. And I haven't even tried them. So hopefully they taste good, but they shouldn't freeze. And that was the idea is like, because a lot of like Fig Newtons, not like, on those are kind of
I know the
a good
Costco ones
trail
you're talking
snack.
about, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah. The
I know.
blueberry raspberry. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. So, I had eaten those all winter as trail snacks. And then on the Quest at 40 below, they actually freeze solid and you can't eat them. Whereas at like 10 or 20 below, not too bad. So that was a disappointment.
mm.
But then there's these, they're a protein bar. They're like Power Crunch and they're like a Kit Kat consistency. So very wafery. And they have all kinds of different flavors. And those are amazing. I eat a lot of those too.
All right. I'm gonna hit
So
you up before my next Costco run. Just to give you, you might need to send me
Yeah.
your list.
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Sounds
great. And
good.
then yeah, peanut butter. The other thing is probably one of my favorites is peanut butter. You can get the to go little cups, and at 40 below, they just pop out like a little puck, a hockey puck, and you can just eat those. I'm hoping that if it's 0 or whatever, it should still do the same thing. When I take them on training runs, it didn't work because they were inside, and then they didn't freeze. They didn't have enough time to freeze, so that's probably one of my favorite snacks. But then I do a lot of electrolytes and stuff in my thermoses, things like that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you said the electrolyte thing because, you know, it gets overlooked that you have to stay hydrated. So that's kind of
Mhm.
your secret is like are you constantly just pouring electrolytes into whatever water that you're drinking? That way you're not having to drink so much water kind of thing, or
Yeah, I don't a lot of times I just don't really feel like drinking plain water. Sometimes I do. Like at the Copper Basin, I was so thirsty the entire time. Like I was just like water, but it was warm. But you can get different flavors, obviously, with the electrolyte packets and put those in your thermos. And I don't, I might just put one in like a 20-ounce thermos. So it's not like it's really strong, but I do kind of put myself on a schedule to try to drink, a thermos or two every run, depending on how long the run is. And I try to eat. I like to eat when I'm out there running the dogs, because then I'm not starving when I get into a checkpoint, even though that's when I'll eat my ramen noodles or the pizza or whatever. But if I can snack and do a lot of that out on the trail, then I feel like I'm utilizing that time when I'm just standing there, right?
Yeah, it's something to keep you
but
awake and
something to do. And it does help me keep awake, because if I'm tired, it's like, oh, I better, take a drink, to finish my thermos, or eat I don't even feel hungry, but like I'm falling asleep, so I'll eat a protein bar or something like that. And so yeah, I make it, like, okay, gotta open these up and eat this, and doesn't always keep you really awake, but it does give you something to do for a minute or two. So
What's your topping of choice on your pizza?
I went to Papa Murphy's and got a variety and just sent out like random stuff. So
Okay.
I don't really have
So
a
let me ask it a different way. So we have a listener who is interested in knowing the mushers' favorite toppings, so that whenever you get to, what is it, Uniloclete, Sean, that you have a pizza waiting for you that is the pizza of your preference. So is there a
wow.
topping that you would, or toppings that you would like for your stop in Uniloclete?
Hmm. And I'm not really picky. I mean, is there a bad topping for pizza?
it's
As long as
true.
there's some
Pizza's
cheese,
pizza.
some sauce, I don't even care if there's pineapple. I know there's a big debate about pineapple or not. Like, I don't care if it's on there or if it's not,
Team pineapple. I'm team pineapple. I'm
I
all
don't.
about it.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
feel
so you
strongly
don't
either
you
way.
don't you're just like
I
surprised me,
don't
it
have a
sounds like.
preference.
Is there
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
that we could put, that someone could put on a pizza that you wouldn't eat? Like, are you
I
like,
mean, I'm not big on jalapenos and like spicy peppers, like that
okay,
sort of
no
thing.
spicy stuff. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
That works. Um, let's see. I have two quick more questions, Sean. I don't know if you have anything, but I say we get this into a wrap up mode. But like, it's easy to talk to everyone for so long.
I
Like, I
know,
feel like
dude.
I could just carry this on for the next another hour easily. So I saw that you were signed up in 21, and I'm assuming that it just didn't work out because that was kind of like COVID related or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of signed up and I was really excited about it. And then as kind of the summer and everything went on, it was like, yeah, this is not. And it ended up being a good thing because I wouldn't have been able to drive up. Um, because what was her name from
Canada.
Minnesota? Yeah, she had to fly up. I think Jessie only got up that year because she has, the house up here. And so, yeah, it was just it ended up working out okay in the end. But it did kind of set me back because then I had dogs that were retiring that would have run then. And then it was like, well, now I've got to raise some dogs to replace those guys. So
Gotcha.
it was, yeah, but that, it worked
So
out. And
my question, a follow-up question related to that is, in that case, does the were your dues for this year like applied to when you paid back then, or did you have to pay twice? How does that work?
no, so I had withdrawn within the time frame where they still gave a refund.
Refund.
And
Okay.
then, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. I didn't,
So.
that those are the little things that I don't know. And then, so the other thing I wanted to ask, you mentioned the rookie meeting a few times, and so I was just kind of curious, how that experience was like for you. Obviously, you've mentioned that like some tips from Aaron were pretty helpful.
Mhm.
I'm just curious about that, and also like if there were any other rookies you met that you kind of maybe you like first time you met them and you struck up a friendship with or something.
Yeah, so the rookie meeting, they had a couple different, experienced mushers come in and talk. So Aaron, the Barringtons, um, they had Stu Nelson, to talk a lot, and Liz Millman, kind of on some of the like drop dogs and things to watch out for with your team. And then they had like some of the logistics people kind of talk about, you know, flying gear out or what different people do. And so that was good. A lot of it, I think, because I'd worked for Aaron and Jesse and kind of been around a little bit, it was stuff that I already had heard or kind of knew, but it was good to get that refresher for sure. Um, and Aaron had some handouts like with an idea of like drop bags, how much meat, things like that to send out. So that was super helpful. Um, as far as the mush or the rookies, we were mostly sitting in class. There wasn't like a whole lot of time. I did know some of them, like um, so Bryce Mumford from the lower 48, Aaron Ultimus I've raced with. I did the Bear Grease once, and then Gabe Dunham. I've known her for a while. The first race we did together, we got lost, and we did find the trail again, but we went up this really steep mountain, and it was my fault because technically I was in the one who turned the wrong way first. But so we kind of bonded years ago over
Trauma
that
bonding.
adventure. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Trauma bonding.
Like it was just a little, in Montana, it was this little 40 miles, 2 days in a row, just like a little fun run. And we went off and everyone went off, but we did find the trail over the mountain that was very steep and then came in and everyone was wondering where they were because, it's a little race. They didn't have GPS trackers or anything. And so they were all worried and we had a great time, um, but yeah, I think I might be the only rookie from no, is Lauro a rookie?
Yep.
I
He
think he
is.
is. Yeah. But where I live kind of up the Elliott a little ways, like I'm kind of in my own little world, I feel like. And so I don't see a ton of people out on the trail. And so I just kind of have stayed focused head down, between working and training, which is good and bad. But we do have a really good mushing community up here. We have a variety, everything from sprint to, me doing the Iditarod. I'm just, a ridge away from like the Dieters and stuff like that too. So kind of fun out on the trail. You never know who you're gonna see when you're out training, but usually it's pretty quiet around here.
Nice. Sean, take it away, sir.
I guess my last question is, how does it feel to be 36 degrees after the Quest being minus 50 or whatever?
Good
And
question. Good question.
It is so warm and everything gets wet. And so like I did a tour this morning and like I wasn't cold, but like your hands get cold because they get wet, and then you go run your team, and it's just everything's wet. But I am really glad that my food drop is already. We took that yesterday because I would have been really sad to have it sitting out here at 36 degrees.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's warm. I think tomorrow's supposed to be a little cooler, supposed to cool back off. And tomorrow I'm supposed to go out. I need to do a training run. And so I was like, well, at least here, because we're up high, I can go down by the Chattanooga, get into some cooler weather. But, the dogs have to learn to run in the warmth too. So we'll
yeah.
just go out and take it slow and, take lots of breaks, I guess.
Seems like most years there's going to be a couple warm days
Yeah.
out there, and yeah, it's what. So when on the cold snap, what is your property's temperature if you're on the hill?
So there's, supposed to be this inversion, but with this last cold snap, it was not much.
Where's the
Like it was,
inversion? It's
yeah, that's what I was thinking. All the people who have lived up here for years are like, oh yeah, it'll be 40 below, but we'll be, I've never seen it below 25 below or whatever. And it's like, well, it was 37 below a couple days. Like it was, so a couple degrees, but not significant. And so yeah, I mean, we still went out and got some training runs when it was like 20, 25 below, but it
nice and
did
toasty.
not. Yeah. So I mean, I don't mind, 20 below, like that's not too bad, but it definitely, if it's 30 below, that's kind of miserable doing tours.
Yeah.
People get cold.
Yeah, it's good for cutting meat and prepping your drop bags.
Yes.
And I also was gonna say, like, what Brennan's probably wondering, with the warm temperatures in your drop bags, if you get like all those patties of meat, in a bag, and then it's 36 degrees, then a little moisture gets in between them, and then it gets cold again, and just a brick. You got a brick of meat, and you're banging at it with an axe, and that, I mean, it still could happen. A lot of days between now
I
and
could sit out there.
and it is what it is. Everybody's dealing with it, but Josi, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure, and really, really appreciate you. I know it's a hectic time for an Iditarod rookie, so thank you.
Yeah, you seem
thanks
so
for having me.
calm right now too. Like, you don't like. Oh man, I'd be shitting a brick right now, but
I'm pretty chill. I think I'm fairly laid back, and it's just, I think when we get to the start, that'll be pretty crazy. I'll be pretty excited. But at the end of the day, the start is just the beginning, right? You're trying to get to know them. It's a long way. So I think the dogs, my dogs definitely need me to stay calm. I've got a lot to remember, lists. I thought my list would be done after, food drop, but I still have multiple lists sitting on the table of like, don't forget this. And then, people that have run it before that, I've asked questions, will text me like, oh, and in McGrath, this or, so just trying to write it all down and keep track of everything, and we'll see how it goes. I am really excited, but it's I don't know. I think it'll sink in a little bit more as we get closer and then actually hit the trail and get out there.
I remember for me, it was, I had it sprung on to me pretty last minute, but driving from Anchorage to Willow the morning of, and then I finally got to Willow, and there was some traffic, and it was off because of the start, and I was in the traffic, and I was like, oh my God, we're here. And I just had a moment, more than a moment. And so it's interesting. It's always interesting to see how everybody handles it, whether you're a rookie or you're a veteran.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Josi.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Before we let you go, I just we always like to give people a chance to mention how people can either follow you or support you, or if there's anything else that you just want to share with listeners.
All right. So if people want to follow, I have a Facebook and Instagram. It's just There and Back Again Sled Dogs, and try to post photos, videos, things like that as I have time and remember to get them. So
and
want to follow, that'd be great.
During the race, is there someone who's been dubbed with responsibilities for updating any statuses or anything?
I have not had. I meant to do that for the Copper and for the Quest, and I need to find someone for Iditarod. Probably Michaela, that might fall on her, but we'll see. I'll try to get somebody, or maybe a couple people, because I know that is always. I know I always enjoy reading, where people are at. So apart from just the tracker and seeing what Iditarod does, so we will see. I have to figure that part out.
Yeah, There and Back Again Sled Dogs. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for being on here, and good luck out there on the 1,000-mile trail.
Yeah, we'll certainly be rooting you on. That's for
Thank you. Thanks for having me.